Willow Creek Springs presents Healthy Living with your host, Joe Grumbine.
And action. Well, hello and welcome to the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine, and today we have back with us Dr. Robert Hoffman.
Hi, everybody.
Robert, welcome back. It's always a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Joe. Pleasure to be here.
For those of you who maybe are new listening, Dr. Hoffman is one of the key players in solving my cancer problem. It helped me to find a lot of good information, good answers. And we have a meeting every Sunday at 4 p.m. Pacific time where we get together on a Zoom, and the link is in the show notes. And if you or somebody you know has cancer, I would highly recommend at least pop in and listen one time. These are some of the most cutting edge solutions that people are saving their lives and lives of others. And there's nothing like this out in the world. So, Robert, welcome to the show. It's always a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Joe. My pleasure, too.
You know, you have been a researcher for as long as I've been alive.
Longer
than I've been alive. And
61 years.
You've discovered...
Joe just turned 60.
Yeah, I'm going to be turning 60 the same day as your birthday.
And the same day as the country celebrates Juneteenth. It's
exactly. I was actually I was tickled that they chose that holiday because, like, every 7 years our birthday lands on Father's Day, which is kind of a double-edged sword. You know, you end up kind of losing a day out of it. But when they decided Juneteenth was going to be, the memorializing, when the slaves were emancipated.
End of slavery.
Yeah, the end of slavery. And I've always been a freedom fighter. So for me, that was really a special thing. So I believe freedom is...
It's a very special day.
It's a very, very special day. Anyways, you've been researching, and particularly in one area, and that area involves cancer's addiction to methionine, and we talk about this a lot, but we talk about this a lot because it's so darn important and because it's getting talked about so little. However, a little bit more and more, we're finding more people talking about it. Not enough, but more. And I'm always intrigued to learn about your research because, people talk about science and they talk about, this is science, that's science, this is facts, that's facts. And you're a guy in the trenches of science, literally on the front line, in the cutting edge of the science, where the experiments are being done and the observations are being made and the data is being logged and the reports are being written and all the stuff that science is. And you're the guy doing it. And if you're not doing that, you're reading somebody else's research. You have like a Smithsonian library in your lab. You have, nothing but just research. And that's how we learn. There are truths in the world.
Yeah, the old saying, right, Joe? Truth from facts.
Yeah.
Exactly. It ain't hard.
Yeah.
It ain't hard. Somebody says something. How do you know that?
Right.
Show me.
And these days, it seems that these quote unquote truths come from some leading expert just saying it. And you and I both know that that's generally a bunch of hogwash and it means nothing.
Well, even the expert can say something that means nothing.
That's what I'm saying. What does mean something.
For the old campaign, where's the beef?
Yes, exactly. And you're the guy with the beef. So
we believe in beef.
Exactly. Exactly. And not just because somebody told us it's real.
Even there's a lot of stuff in the literature that's not right either. So
exactly.
we need to be very discerning, see how it repeats, see if it's logical, see what's missing. These days, the last 20, 30 years, maybe, you see a lot of very high-powered papers on cancer research, cancer's this and cancer's that, and you don't see any control. Well,
Right.
did you do the experiment on some normal cells? Never enter their mind.
Right.
Never enter their mind.
And
So
it's crazy because
the high school kids could know how to do that, but these guys with their high technology and all their fancy reagents and machines and genes and stuff, they do these experiments. Oh, the cancer cell does this and it does that. It does the other thing. These are the hallmarks of cancer. And the whole paper, 40 pages sometimes, there's not a single experiment about with normal cells. It's ridiculous.
it is. I remember in seventh grade, we did a science project and, I showed the effect of colored light on a lizard. People think only chameleons can change their colors, but it turns out other lizards can too. But
Wow.
I had a control. I had two or three alligator lizards, and I did it with more than one lizard so that it wasn't just an anomaly. And maybe they were all relatives, who knows? But the point was, I would have one lizard and I would have him under sunlight, I'd have him under candlelight, I'd have him under luminescent bulb, and then I would put him under various different color bulbs, and then we would photograph him. And we would take him out into the sunlight to photograph him. So it was the photograph was always the same, even at the same time of day. And it wasn't entirely super dramatic, but it was noticeable. And these lizards changed their colors when they were in a certain color light for 24 hours. But if I would have never really known it unless I had that control picture to put right next to it.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you take a picture with the lizard in colored light, and of course it looks colored,
Yeah.
or I can highlight data in a particular way to prove a point, but unless you have that control, and cancer especially, my God, it's such a tricky problem, and the cells that make cancer cells started out as normal cells, you know.
That's correct.
So you have to be able to go, well, what about the normal cells? Because without your normal cells, you're not alive, right? You got to have
Yeah.
enough normal cells.
Yeah.
So we got
Well,
to know
we have a lot.
what is it going to do to the normal cells? And we've talked on the show about, a lot of claims. People talk about cysteine reduction and glutamine reduction and glucose reduction and all these things. And they say, well, if you just remove these things from your body, then the cancer will suffer and maybe die.
Well, the normal cells suffer too.
Exactly.
All you have to do is control.
And that's like even
And sometimes we not only do a parallel control, we do a control with a co-culture, where we culture the cancer cell and the normal cell in the same dish, and we mark the cancer cell with a fluorescent protein, and we can see the normal cells because we use so-called fibroblasts, and they have this very elongated structure and easy to identify. So we can tell if something's inhibiting the cancer cells more than the normal cells, hey, that's good. And if it's kind of the same old, similar, it has nothing to do with cancer. It's just general. So, and this problem started 100 something years ago with Warburg. The cancers are this and the cancers are that. And he didn't do the correct controls with normal cells. And people have been following him the last 100 years. He's become very popular in this century, and people think they're really cool. They're following Warburg. Ooh, but it's
everybody and
all
every
wrong.
doctor that I've talked to, they all talk about the Warburg effect. That's it.
Yeah, well, it's all wrong.
Yeah.
And we just published a paper a month ago or so. It's right on our PubMed site. It says Warburg effect is not a cancer paradigm. And of course, 99.9999% of the researchers either won't see that paper, or if they see it, won't believe it, or they'll just see this is another terrible thing from Hoffman or whatever.
Well, I tell you what, being the black sheep of the family, to me, generally indicates that at very least you're not just drinking the Kool-Aid that's out there.
I
And
don't like Kool-Aid.
I don't either. I'm
So,
right there
you know,
with you.
anyway, we need to keep doing very simple experiments, always controlling with the normal cells, and we're going to learn more and more about what cancer really is. It's we have a good start. We got a long way to go, but I think we're in the right direction.
Now, today I want to talk about some things where there's all these medications. You know, chemotherapy's been around for what, 50, 60 years? It's been
Well,
around
it's
for a
almost
while.
70.
Yeah. And
Almost 70. One of the first patients was Babe Ruth.
didn't that come out of poison gas that came out of World War One, World War Two? Didn't they, like, somebody figured out that it could have
Yeah,
some?
the mustards. But the
Yeah.
real modern chemo started with Dr. Farber in Boston in what's known as the Dana-Farber Institute now. And he was giving the patients analogs of folic acid or derivatives of folic acid. And that approach eventually led to extremely good results with childhood acute leukemia. When I was growing up, when I was a kid, that was a universally fatal disease. But thanks to Dr. Farber, Dr. Fry, Dr. Fry-Reich, Dr. DeVito, and Dr. Bertino, that group of people, that unique group of people, were the real heroes of cancer research and therapy. And the majority of those kids, where they all died, most of them live now.
That is
And there
amazing.
hasn't been a repeat of that since then. Maybe it's some of the other leukemias and lymphomas, but for solid tumors, which are the vast majority of the cancers, that kind of great result has never been repeated.
Hi, this is Joe Grumbine, and I wanted to share an update. The platform that hosts this podcast has made some changes to the subscriber settings, and we have a number of subscriber-only episodes that we offer to the supporters, and for a minimum of $3 a month, we can get you signed up. And if you're already signed up and you're having some kind of trouble locating these episodes in the other platforms, I would say maybe the best answer is to unsubscribe and then resubscribe. I'm sorry for the hassle. I don't have any way to make a change, but I'm very grateful for all the support. Thank you.
And when you're talking about chemotherapy, you know, I was one. A lot of people have this really negative opinion about it because they don't know anything about it.
And it's no fun.
And it is no fun. And it can be deadly, and it can be
Usually not deadly, but it can be.
But it could be. I mean, especially
it's very toxic.
Yeah.
And that's why it works.
Right.
These are not cancer drugs. They're so-called cytotoxins, cell toxins. That's why you lose your hair. The hair is the most rapidly dividing component of your body. Well, those drugs, that's what they target, dividing cells. So first thing that happens, you lose your hair. We hope the
Right.
tumor is at least a little bit sensitive like the hair. And so they're not cancer drugs. They're cytotoxins, and even the so-called targeted therapy. It's still chemotherapy. So in your case, you got standard of care chemo, and it was heavy duty. And then we augmented it with methionase, low methionine diet, ivermectin, all the other things you were doing, ozone, all the other things you were doing. And what we learned from you, Joe, standard of care therapy is absolutely necessary, but in most cases, it's not sufficient. And everybody told you, yeah, Joe, it's not going to work without radiation. And they even wanted to cut you up in the beginning,
Yep.
take off half your face. That's what
Exactly.
we're going to do. Take off half your face. And we just said, two of us just sat down and said, hey, why don't we just give chemo a try? It might, if it's not working, we do other, well, okay, we'll go to the radiation. Maybe we'll even go to the surgery if it's not working. But it worked.
Exactly.
It worked. And
if it didn't work, or if it stops working one day, I'll consider more
consider everything to stay alive.
dramatic options. But
now you're getting immunotherapy as a kind of preventative.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to be vigilant. The chance that you're negative even on methionine PET, which is the most sensitive imaging there is, the chances that you still have some of those cancer cells are very high. So we got to keep them from growing back to the extent that they can affect you. So that's where we are. I think we're in a good place. You certainly have the doctor I would go to myself, and I recommend everybody to, Dr. Song.
Absolutely.
He's a national resource. He also was a black sheep, and knew him. Oh yeah, he gives high dose Tom. And I think he really gave you very high dose too.
Oh yeah, I am certain of it. I have no doubt.
You got out a lot more by him than you did in Irvine.
And I'm grateful for it. It was not fun. It was not easy, but I believe it was instrumental in knocking it out. And in fact, even giving me that 7th course when we only talked about 6, and he's like, "No, I'm going to give you another one." And it whooped my ass, but I think it finished it off. I think it finished scorching the earth there, and
that's a thing, Joe. People don't like chemo. Nobody likes chemo. But if you have an aggressive cancer, there's no choice. You need it. You got to have it. You got to have it. And it's absolutely necessary. But in most cases, it's not sufficient. We got to do more things.
I want to talk a little bit about the experiments that you're doing, because most, if not all, of your work in some way is centered around the methionine effect, either on the cancer directly or on other treatments in association with the cancer. But somehow methionine involved in the work that you're doing. And there are so many different treatments now. There's so many different drugs. There's so many different kinds of cancer that you would have to clone yourself 100 times and have a billion-dollar budget and a giant laboratory to even begin to take on all the things to experiment.
The good thing is, I think all the cancers are much more similar than they are different.
Agreed.
They're
And you
all
even
methionine addicted. There's no question about this. They're
and
all methionine addicted. So that is a big help. We work on that assumption. There's always exceptions, but I've never seen one. And so
you even found that when a cancer becomes methionine immune
independent.
or independent, it becomes less malignant.
Yeah. So rare cells in a population of cancer cells, if they're put under selective pressure of very low methionine or methionase, can be, we call revert and become independent of methionine and just needing the normal amount of methionine, not the cancer amount. And then when we analyze these guys, we look at them in the dish or we put them in the animal. They're really either not cancer anymore or they're very benign cancer. They've lost either all their malignancy or most of it. What does that tell us? It tells us that malignancy and methionine addiction are really tight.
Exactly.
And probably one causes the other. You cannot separate. Well, let's put it this way. If the cells are methionine addicted, they're cancer. If they're methionine independent, they're normal or near normal. So that's telling us that methionine addiction and cancer are so tight together. They can't separate the two. And that means there's must be some cause and effect there, I think.
Right.
And so we want to try to figure it out. What is the property of methionine addiction that confers malignancy to the cell?
And do you have a suspicion?
I think it has something to do with methylation.
Uh-huh.
I'll show you some unpublished data. Just a moment, please.
All right. So while you're getting that, I want to set up the next line of conversation here.
Go ahead, Joe.
Go ahead and do this. So when we were at Dr. Song's office last time, you were talking to Dr. Song about your work, and in every chemo infusion, there's always little leftovers of these drugs, and you have to dispose of them because they're toxic and there's not enough to do anything with. But there are these trace amounts that are left behind in every time somebody gets an infusion. And you were able to get access to some of that. And the thing that's really interesting about that is, as readily available as these drugs are, some of them are expensive, and you can't just go out to the drugstore and go buy some docetaxel. You have to have access to it, and you have to be able to get it. And in order, some of your experiments, and I'm just repeating what I've heard, and I'm sure there's a whole lot more to it than what I'm repeating, but it seems that you do a lot of experiments around the removal of a dietary element, whether it's a glucose type molecule or amino acid type molecule or something that we eat that is part of our nutrition cycle, and you'll remove it and then compare the results to the healthy cells and the cancer cells as a single experiment. But other experiments you do, you will add a drug or a toxin or some standard of care or even some proposed standard of care to the cancer cells, and either add methionine or restrict the cancer cells and the healthy cells with methionine when you do it. And you are able to study the interaction or the effect on these drugs And it's interesting because in some cases we find that a drug that has a particular purpose, like ivermectin was designed as a anti-parasitic drug, and people give it to horses and animals, and it's a very safe drug. There's all these different drugs. Dr. Castro gave me a flu drug that was a very safe old drug that had almost no side effects, and it was good for certain flu symptoms or whatever. But people will find that sometimes these very same drugs will have an effect. Well, just like they discovered with Viagra, it had this unexpected effect that everybody really liked a lot. So next thing you know, they marketed it for that. But what other things happen, and I'm learning as I go, I know very little when it comes to science, but I'm learning a lot as I'm going. When I was battling the anemia, I learned that, well, when you take iron you can get iron from all these different sources, but your body doesn't necessarily absorb it, and it just kind of passes on through you. But if you take it with some vitamin C, all of a sudden your body can absorb it a lot better. So there's these combinations of things that can make something work better or keep it from working. And you're able now to study some of these interactions between some of these chemo drugs or different type of therapies and these other factors like removal of methionine or adding of methionase, et cetera. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that? First, let's go back to your data that you just grabbed, and then we'll jump over.
Okay. Well, I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So this is normal cells. The black is how they grow in methionine, and the red is how they grow when homocysteine replaces methionine. And this is the number of cells, and this is the concentration of methionine and homocysteine going up.
Okay.
Homocysteine is the precursor of methionine.
Right.
And this is a cancer cell. It grows really well on methionine, as you can see in the black. And
Yeah.
even at super high doses of homocysteine, it can't grow. They're so different, the normal cell and the cancer cell.
That's wild. And that's
And
right there for you.
it's a mystery. So in the old days, people said, and they were wrong, that, oh, the cancer cell can't convert the homocysteine to methionine. We showed that was wrong in 1976, we published. And to this day, some people keep saying it. It's amazing how misinformation never dies.
The
And
good information is hard to get out there, but the bad
right,
information
there you
lives to
go.
spread.
That's right.
Like cancer.
That's right. So both the normal cell and the cancer cell are making a lot of methionine from homocysteine, but the cancer cell needs external methionine, just a little bit, in the presence of homocysteine. It just needs a little tiny bit of external methionine, and it grows like crazy. So I think the answer to what is really going on in the cancer cell that distinguishes it from the normal cell is what is that little tiny bit of methionine that the cancer cell needs as an external source, not from what it makes, as an external source. What is it the cancer cell doing with that methionine? I think if we know that, we'll know the basic mechanism of cancer.
I think you're right. I think it makes perfect sense. And, when it comes to the diet, pretty much every food that has methionine is also loaded with cysteine. So it's not, if you're trying to remove one or the other,
You
but
don't
you
have to remove the cysteine, Joe. If you can have tons of cysteine around, you remove the methionine, the cancer cells don't grow.
right, exactly. That was kind
So
of
in
my
this
point.
case, the medium, the growth medium, has lots of cysteine. It isn't
Right,
because there's no methionine there.
right.
They're
I
not
love
growing.
it.
All the cysteine, all the glutamine, all the glucose, it's all there. They can't grow because we've replaced methionine with homocysteine.
Right.
And now And we've known since 1976 that under this situation, you add a little bit of methionine, 1/100th of the normal amount, and the cells take off.
Wow.
Well,
So it doesn't take much.
no, in the presence of homocysteine.
Right.
If there's no homocysteine, they need a lot of methionine. So we need to find out what the cancer cell is doing with this little bit of external methionine that it needs. The cancer cell is making tons of methionine from this homocysteine.
Right.
This is over 1 millimolar, 4 millimolar. It's a huge, huge amount, much more than you could ever even get in the body.
Wow.
And it doesn't grow. But if you add and they're making lots of methionine from this. We showed this in 1976, and we also showed in 1976 that you add a little bit of methionine, 1/100th the normal amount, in the presence of homocysteine, the cells take off. So what are the cancer cells doing with this minute amount of methionine that they need, but they need it coming from the outside of the cell, not from what they make? So the cancer cell distinguishes the methionine that it makes from homocysteine and methionine that it gets outside. It's the same methionine.
Right. Molecularly, it's the same.
It's absolutely the same, but the cancer cell treats it differently if it makes it or it gets it from the outside. And so that's the question, I think, is going to tell us the basic mechanism of cancer. What is it doing with that little tiny bit of methionine that it requires from the outside, even though it's making tons of it from homocysteine? So this is not going to be easy to find out. May take some machines that we don't have for analysis, but we're going to find a way. So
I know we will. I know
we're going to be doing a lot of different kind of research, but this is the main problem now, and I think it's the main problem of cancer research. Of course, nobody wants to believe that. The mainstream guys, they're all doing their stuff. That's irrelevant. This is the answer, and
I think you're onto it. I'm curious, the future is going to involve technology. I've been doing a bunch of interviews with doctors and scientists that are in different fields talking about different things. I did an interview with a guy who's a hair restoration surgeon, and all the different the technology and how it's improved, and stem cell treatments and single follicle transplants, and they're
we're going to
doing
look at our studies on the stem cells in the hair follicle that can make neurons, heart cells that can make muscle cells.
Yeah.
But he never read any of there's 88 of those papers, but he never read one.
So anyways, in looking at the future of machines and instruments that are able to detect different things, is there anything on the horizon that you see that's going to be helpful?
We have the machines, Joe. They're just so darn expensive. The machines we need for this analysis are out there. We just don't have the money.
Wow.
They're out there. They're out there.
That's a topic I really want to get into, is the possibilities of health and science and the reality of limitations of funds and what that means. I before we get finished, I wanted to touch on a topic. When we were at Dr. Song's last, you were able to access some compounds that are going to help you in some of your research. I was curious how you were going to set some of those things up and what you were looking to discover with them.
Well, this is not so much for discovery, but to help the patient. So 40 years ago, we discovered what we call the histoculture drug response assay. That's a big word. We use the acronym HDRA, but the concept is simple. we culture the cancer cells in a dish and we put in the drugs. And we say that do the drugs work or they don't work? Do they kill the cells or they don't kill the cells? And what we found is that using a better type of culture that allows it the three-dimensional growth rather than two-dimensional growth on a flat surface of a dish, we use a sponge, and the sponge is what the surgeons use for hemostat, but it's a great substrate to grow cancer cells or normal cells or cancer tissue. It's called gel foam.
Wow, I like that.
And so we need drugs to test. And you can buy the cancer cells from these chemical companies, not the drug companies. It's a lot of money. We don't have the money. And all the bottles that we've recovered from Dr. Song's box, there's a little bit of chemo left in them. And we're going to try to, we haven't even finished going through the box yet because it's so full of bags,
There's
needles.
a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah, and the nice nurse, her name is Tui. She's going to separate out everything for us next time.
Right.
Anyway, meanwhile, we're trying to recover. And so that's what we want to do. And these patients are in Japan. We get the tumor sent to us. Usually we put it back in the mice so that we have an infinite amount of the tissues growing in the mice. And we put them in culture using the 3D culture of the HDRA. And we're going to be using these drugs to see which ones work better. And that has been shown in clinical trials. The results in the dish correlate to the patient's outcome. We show this in a number of different trials. This is not widely accepted at all by the oncologists. It's just another thing that makes more work for them for no money.
Right.
So they don't do it. They allow the surgeon to put the cancer all into the pickle jar with formalin, dead. Nobody wants to do it. There's a few labs, there's a few clinics in Japan that want to do it. They're way ahead of the world. It's something that the concept has been known for 70 years, more than 70 years. But the cancer doctors, they don't want to be bothered with it. They know better. They can tell you what's going to work just because they think about it. They don't need data. If only I could be as smart as they. So,
if only, right?
So that's why we're begging for try to recover some drugs for these experiments to try to help the patient choose the right drug.
I love it. Well,
The more effective drug or the less ineffective drug.
The way that we were talking about what Shihiro was doing and what you guys are doing in collecting an actual tumor cell chunk of tumor and then replicating it and then being able to experiment specifically. We're going to talk maybe on the next episode about, cancer building resistance to treatments. And
this is a huge problem.
Remember
I said yesterday on the Zoom.
Yeah.
Drugs work until they don't work.
Yeah. And even his doctor didn't want to really hear about it. And
it's working. We're just going to keep doing it.
But these doctors know.
Work, and then it's too late.
Right. And these doctors know
that drug, and in so doing, there's a very big chance it becomes more malignant.
Right.
Very big chance it's going to be cross-resistant to whatever else they have.
Exactly.
You can't stay on the same drug continuously. You got to get off it and maybe come back to it. But staying on the same drug, continuously is going to result in resistance. You can say this way over 90% or 99%. I don't know the number. But you keep on the same drug and it's the cancer is going to become resistant.
Well, and it's the same thing in the human body with every system. If you take the same
bacteria with antibiotics,
all of it,
there's a big trouble. People are so overtreated with antibiotics.
Exactly.
They have become resistant. And
Right.
it's a huge problem. With the kind of same principle with the cancer, with the
Right.
cells. So these drugs, whether they're antibiotics or chemotherapy, they work until they don't work.
Exactly.
If you go that far, it's mostly too late.
Well, and I think, like you said, I think you nailed it. It's too much work. And
But the drugs work and don't bother me. We're going to just give you the same old, same old. That's what Alan's getting.
yeah,
And I keep telling Alan that it isn't good. I don't think he quite catches it. The doctor tells me I'm doing good. It's true, Alan,
right.
I'm doing good, but there's going to be a point where you're going to be not doing good. So I don't know. Chihiro's story taught us a lot. She was on
Exactly.
this drug for 3 years, doing fantastic, and all of a sudden the cancer exploded.
Right. And that's even with the low methionine diet and the
Yeah,
methionine.
yeah. On all of that, the cancer became so tough to control. Now she's on another drug and doing really well, but she shouldn't stay on that too long.
Right.
Can
No, I
always,
agree.
the adaptive therapy up, treat, get it down, go off the treatment, even let it come back a little, treat again with that drug or a different drug, just so that you don't allow the resistant cells to take over the cancer, to be the dominant ones. And that's what's going to kill you, those resistant cells. So you have to do certain easy logical steps to prevent the resistant cells from becoming dominant. And
Agreed.
and we can do it. We can do it. The adaptive therapy guy, Zilla, I forgot his name. He's got a kind of cool name. He says, we're prostate cancer using my way, he said, should never be a lethal disease anymore.
Right.
That's a pretty big statement.
It's
And
huge.
I wouldn't say that's the truth right now, but I can say it's certainly in the right direction, in my opinion.
Well, and it certainly has that potential.
Yeah,
Well, Robert, I love this conversation. Each time we talk, it opens up more doors of things I want to talk about, and so we'll be back sooner than later to get more into it. I want to talk in the future about the different types of treatments and how they're different, what they do. I know, and then we can talk about your experience with methionine restriction or methionase or both as to their effectiveness. And I think that we're gonna look at some very, very different approaches to different cancer treatments and what they work. A lot of them are similar, they're oxidative stress, but then there's a lot of them that are not that and a lot of different things. So it's interesting to think that this methionine restriction, just off the top of my head before we sign off, you have immunotherapy, which is kind of almost the polar opposite of chemotherapy, where you have one that is oxidizing and attacking a certain type of cell, and the other one is targeting your own body's immune system and
promoting.
supporting it for it to go and take care of it its own way. Very, very different.
One doesn't, they're different, as like you say, but
And
one
yet
doesn't exclude the other.
you'll still find that when
Like you did, 1 week one week the other.
yeah. And so you'll still find though with these totally different types of treatments that removing methionine from the diet and adding the methionase, limiting the amount of methionine circulating in your body makes both of these totally different types of treatments work better. And I want to get into that a little bit more in the next episode.
Okay.
Well, Robert, it's always a pleasure. I
You too, Joe.
enjoy our
We're talking
conversation.
about the most important things for cancer.
Yes. Yeah, we're getting to it, and I'm in my protocol. Even like I told you about last week, my own little crazy fast. But I thought about it's a pretty good idea doing sort of a methionine purge from my body. Working
I think it's a good idea too.
working out during a fast, just taking the Hominex only so I don't lose
That's
muscle
really good.
mass.
Really
And
good.
I felt good doing it. So, I'll do it again in a month. We'll
Well,
try it.
that's the bottom line, isn't it? How you feel?
Exactly. All right, Robert. Well, thank you again so much
Thank
for all
you,
your
Joe,
work.
for having me.
And I
It's
look
always a
forward to
pleasure. I hope
see-
a lot of folks will watch this.
Yep.
I hope they'll have a lot of questions. We're here to answer it. And if you have cancer, it's not a death sentence. It's a
Nope.
call to fight
Exactly.
and think.
And becoming your own advocate and finding a doctor that'll work with you. And maybe it takes 3 or 4 doctors to get what you need.
You might need 3 or 4 at one time. That's
Doesn't
okay.
matter.
What the heck?
Go after it. Yep, exactly. And remember, Sundays at 4 o'clock Pacific time, we have our Zoom call. Everybody,
We're here for you.
and we have the
We have a
link.
lot of other patients that are very, very supportive of you.
Exactly. All right, Robert. Well, this has been another episode of the Healthy Living
My
Podcast.
pleasure, Joe.
I'm your host, Joe Grumbine. I want to thank all of our listeners for making the show possible, and we will see you next time.
Next time, everybody.
This has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. We produce this show so that people can share their stories, people that have overcome obstacles, people that are undergoing obstacles. We're building a community of health-minded individuals. If you're interested in supporting the show, please leave a review on the platform you're listening to it on. If you're interested in becoming a guest, please send an email to itsjoegrumbine@gmail.com, or you can send a note into the notes section of the podcast. All right. Well, thank you for supporting this show, and we hope you've enjoyed it.